In Iran, there is a cultural and religious tradition of the family of a murdered person to attend the sentencing of the person who has been the murderer. And in 2014, an Iranian woman, Mrs. Alinejad, had been waiting 7 years for this moment, for the sentencing of her 17-year-old son's killer to come to pass. And so she and her husband went to the place where a noose was prepared and the rope was put around the killer's neck. And at the very last moment, she exercised another Iranian cultural and religious tradition, and that was she chose to take the noose off of that killer's neck. In 2013, Americans Anita and Ronnie Smith moved to Libya. They had a calling to partner with the people there to create a better tomorrow. Ronnie was a high school chemistry teacher, and one morning in December of 2013, he was out for his daily run and he was shot and killed by an unknown assailant. Anita wrote a letter to the man who was accused and later convicted, and she was put on television reading this letter, and in the letter she said, "I forgive you. I love you. How could I not? You are a beautiful child of God." In June of 2009, a property owner was supervising the towing of an unregistered vehicle from a rental property of his in Akron, Ohio, when the owner of that vehicle came up and, in a very angry exchange, punched him in the face. That wouldn't have been so bad, except that there was a brick wall right behind Chuck Sandstrom, and his head struck the wall and caused a traumatic brain injury that he continues to deal with to this day. During the trial of the man who punched him, Michael Ayers, Chuck Sandstrom and his wife both testified and participated on the side of the defense because they wanted to see his sentence shortened. They wanted to see him get treatment while he was in prison. They wanted to see him get education and have an opportunity to work while he was in prison. They forgave him for what had occurred. Chuck Sandstrom said this, to borrow from Harold Kushner. Now, Harold Kushner is an American rabbi who wrote the book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. Forgiveness is first and foremost a way of seeing. It cannot change the facts about the world we live in, but it can change the way we see those facts. So most people see my injury as a tragedy, but for my wife and me, it's created an opportunity to love more deeply. People think we're special to have forgiven this man, but trust me, my wife and I are not abnormally good people. What is true, however, is that the path of forgiveness can take ordinary people on an extraordinary journey. And what a powerful statement that is, to recognize that forgiveness can take ordinary people on an extraordinary journey. Forgiveness can give people like you and I who are not abnormally good. What kind of word is abnormal anyway? But we're not abnormally good. We're normally good people. It can take us into a whole new way of being. It can give us an opportunity for deeper love. It can help us not change the facts about the world we live in, but change the way we see those facts. I love how Rabbi Harold Kushner comes from the same religious tradition that was a part of Jesus' education, Jesus' come from. In the book of Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus told a parable that sometimes is called the mote and the beam, but in Unity, I've always heard it referred to as the speck and the log. And the parable just says this: how do you notice the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own? Or how can you say to your neighbor, let me take that speck out of your eye, when the log is in your own? How many of you have ever gotten something stuck in your eye? Yeah, like dust or sand or an eyelash or a cat hair. And it's really irritating. It's so irritating that eventually we can't do anything else, or maybe you're superhuman and you can, but if I have something stuck in my eye, I can't read, I can't clean, I can't do dishes, I can't drive, you know, all the important things in life. I can't do them because I'm so preoccupied by this little tiny something in my eye. Now the medical professionals will tell you, whatever you do, don't rub it. See, you knew that. Don't rub it. They tell you blink rapidly. And if blinking rapidly doesn't get the speck out, then what you need to do is flush it or wash it. I think there's nothing as good or effective for getting specks out of our eyes than a good old-fashioned cry. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a minute. But however we deal with a speck, an eyelash, a dust, sand, or a little something in our eye, it's nothing compared to the metaphysical log. The metaphysical log that is blocking our vision, that is bottling up inside us every unexpressed feeling or emotion that we've had about an event or an issue. We have that log in our eye, and it's keeping everything inside. So every bit of unforgiveness, every bit of hatred, every bit of anger, every bit of condemnation is just fueling and then refueling itself, so that we're just one hot mess. There was a commentary on the sutras written in the 5th century by Buddhaghosa, and he says, by doing this, you are like a man who wants to hit another and picks up a burning ember or excrement in his hand, and so first burns himself or makes himself stink. Stuffing it inside and keeping that log, it's, you know, that's a good analogy for log jam. It's a log jam. Metaphysically, we have a log jam when we do that, when we have all those unexpressed feelings and emotions inside us. Scarlett somebody had a son named Jesse who was killed in 2012 in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. And all she could think about from the moment she woke up till the moment she fell asleep at night was how angry she was at that shooter. Not only was she angry at the shooter, she was angry at the shooter's mother, who gave access of a gun to that shooter. And then one day she woke up and she said, I want to let it go. I want to lay it down. And she envisioned these big giant scissors. And with those big giant scissors, she cut the tie that was keeping her anger bound to her. And she experienced forgiveness. And she could see the event differently. We think forgiveness is about the other people. You know, they did it. If it weren't for them, we think forgiveness has to go to them, but really forgiveness is for ourselves. Forgiveness is about feeling our feelings. It's about taking the log out of our eye so that all those feelings can be expressed and felt all the way through. When we feel feelings all the way through, I believe that's when we come to forgiveness. When we've given every ounce to them, expression, whether it's in a journaling mode, if we're journaling, that's very cathartic. It creates space for us to see things differently. One step up from journaling is journaling, and then burning that journal. That's very cathartic. It opens up space. We can dance it out. We can scream into a pillow. We can pretend we're a musical instrument. We can be a tuba. Or we can be a trombone. Or we can be, you know, a cello. A cello is sometimes that combination of sadness and melancholy. It's just so, I don't know, there's something so liquid and moving about a cello that allows those expressions to come forth. And then we're back to the good old-fashioned cry. Crying our eyes out. Have you ever had an experience where you've sobbed and you've cried so that you can hardly breathe, but when you're complete, you have a whole new space in front of you. You have a whole new space in your life. You have a whole new sense of peace. You have a whole new sense of joy. And for some reason, you are aware of more love in your life. Catherine Ponder, who was one of Edwin Gaines' teachers, said this: if you want greater good, greater prosperity in your life, start forming a vacuum to receive it. The universe abhors a vacuum. So if we're creating space by expressing and expressing and expressing, our goodness is going to suck right in. In other words, get rid of what you don't want to make room for what you do want. Make room for what you do want. And we do that through forgiveness. We do that through expressing our feelings. And Wayne Gaines tells the story in her book about finding the man of her dreams. It was her first marriage. She found the man of her dreams. She had moved to Guam and she met this man. She said he looked like a god. He looked like a god and he loved her, and they got married and they were happy and everything was going swimmingly well. After the deal with Guam was after 2 years you would get a trip around the world, so they took off. She was 6 months pregnant. That didn't matter. They were still going around the world. They went to the Philippines. They went to Japan. Hong Kong was their third step. And he came in the room and he said, Edwin, I have something to tell you. I don't love you anymore and I'm leaving. She said she spent 7 years in a rage. 7 years. She became mean and bitter and ugly. And she became sick. It ate her from the inside out. She got cancer, and it was only when she was almost dead from the cancer that she recognized that she had some forgiveness to do. And it needed to start with that man. And Wayne says this: forgiveness is an act of will. We make ourselves do it. We don't do it because it feels good or because we want to. We do it because it's the law. And when we work the law works. When we engage in forgiveness, we can take that log out of our eye and see the world differently. We can see that there's an abundant universe. We can see that all the goodness that we desire is already ours. But we've got to do the work. She then says, if everyone on earth were to practice forgiveness as a daily discipline, life on this planet would be completely transformed. And that planetary transformation can start today with you and me. Planetary transformation can start with you and me. All it takes is a critical mass. This week's Time magazine issue has an article on critical mass. The title of the article says, what happens when women reach a critical mass of influence? When women reached 20% in the Senate, they went after the Pentagon to reform the military sexual assault protocol. When they reached 25% of Hollywood producers, they took down Harvey Weinstein and his casting couch culture. Critical mass has its roots in physics. It is the amount of material needed to sustain a nuclear explosion. Accumulate enough, set it off, and there is no other outcome but boom. We can achieve critical mass with the discipline of forgiveness. Scientific studies, both in hard science and soft science like sociology, say that it takes 20 to 25% of a critical mass of people, of thinking, of acting on to create a planetary shift. Metaphysics says 2%. 2% of us in the world with a daily discipline of forgiveness can change the way we see things. It can be a world where it is no big deal to take the noose off of a killer's neck. It can be a world where it's no big deal for someone to get on television and say, I forgive you, I love you, you are a beloved child of God. It'll be no big deal for somebody who suffers a traumatic brain injury to turn around to the very person who hurt him and say, I want you to be taken care of. I want your needs to be met. I want to make sure you get education. I want to make sure that you get treatment. I want to make sure that you have work opportunities while you live out your sentence. I want the scissors, the giant scissors for every one of us to cut that tie that's binding us, that's keeping that log strapped to our eye. And we can do it because it starts right here. Not easy, but doable. Doable. Edwin Gaines gives us 5 techniques. Number 5 is meditate with a master teacher. It could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be Mary, it could be Mohammed. It doesn't matter who your master teacher is. It doesn't matter if that's a master teacher you don't even usually meditate with. Sit down in meditation. Sit next to them. Let them hold your hand. Let them be with you while you express, while you lay your love down on the altar. Let them be with you and listen to their words. Listen to them tell you, I love you. You are free. You are free. And recognize that you have worked for your own forgiveness. Technique number 4 is to make an inventory of transgressions. Now, this is something that Edwin got out of Al-Anon, and she says it really works. It's almost like confession. Even though we're not Catholic, we can do it. She says, and do you know what she got to realize through this process? That her granddaddy was right. Every dog does have fleas. We've all said things we wish we hadn't. We've all done things we wish we hadn't. We've all kind of just cut somebody off in the grocery store line because, you know, we have things to do. But the truth is we have an abundance of time. And once we air our list with somebody who, like Edwin had, she said, oh, honey, is that all you got? We may think it's horrible. And if we think it's horrible, it's horrible. There are things that we don't think are forgivable, but they are. Whether we've lied or cheated or been betrayed or been battered or been raped or been molested or any of those other horrible things, horrible things that can happen. When we exercise the law and as we forgive, we can see them differently. We can see ourselves differently. Step number 3 is forgiveness inventory. It's that opportunity to set aside by ourselves and make a list of all the people that we probably haven't forgiven yet. And then work on ourselves to forgive those people. Step number 2 is kind of like step number 3, except we do it every night. Every night before we go to bed, say, have I put anyone outside my heart today? It kind of helps keep these long lists nipped in the bud. Have I put anyone outside my heart today? Did I walk by and not say hello? How could I have put someone outside my heart today and invite them back in? And then step number 1, because you know what, they're all gateways. They're all methods. They're all different methodologies for engaging in the law of forgiveness. But step number 1 is the one that opens our consciousness. And once our consciousness gets open, then we can think there's no way on God's green earth am I ever going to forgive. But with these consciousness opening affirmations, we can. And we do. We surprise ourselves all the time. I wanted you to have an easy way to put them on your mirror, to tape them above your kitchen sink so they're in your bulletin. And if you didn't get one in the bulletin, get one on the way out when you leave today. But let's begin now with affirmations before we go into our meditation time. I forgive myself. Okay, we all have to do it together. Okay, here it is. Thank you so much, Bruce. Okay, I forgive myself completely for every mistake I have ever made. You better take a breath. I forgive others, knowing that we all did the best we could at the time. I let go of guilt, blame, shame, judgment, and hurt. I am free from condemnation. I forgive my parents completely. Better take another breath. I forgive everyone who did not give me the love and attention I desired. I forgive myself for my unconscious behaviors of the past, and I forgive others theirs as well. I allow myself to feel forgiven and move forward in life. It begins by laying it down on the altar of love. Let's sing about surrendering as we come into a time of meditation with Marie.